Hello everyone, I'm Hannah Sadhana, and I'll be presenting the ethics of Seattle's gentrification and how it impacts businesses, homeowners, and minorities. Let's get started. Gentrification. What is it? According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, gentrification is the process in which a poor area experiences an influx of middle-class or wealthy people who renovate and rebuild homes and businesses, and which often results in an increase in property values and displacement of earlier, usually poorer residents. To provide a local example, Capitol Hill's demographic has been changing as market prices skyrocket and Seattle has become even more tech-oriented, with companies like Amazon and Microsoft moving in and hiring highly educated professionals. Higher income and predominantly white people who work high-paying jobs in Seattle are moving into previously affordable areas, which prices lower income homeowners and renters out. So, I asked you guys a couple weeks ago how much you would pay for a parking spot if you owned an apartment, and it was very informative. Over half of the class said they would pay less than $100 a month for parking. Yet, this is only a fraction of how much it costs to afford a spot to park at Coda Apartments. In the Chinatown International District, the new Coda Apartments is charging $65,000 per parking spot. Yes, $65,000. This insane rate continues to showcase the gap between long-time residents that can't afford to compete with high-earning newcomers, being a social issue as well, with 43.5% of residents being Asian and 29.7% being under the poverty line. This clear divide in pricing is what causes gentrification, as Coda Apartments knows that there's a market of people that will purchase that parking spot, and by doing that, causes housing in the area to drive up and kicking those who can't out. Gentrification is correlation with business. When small businesses, including communities serving mom and pop shops, are displaced, it can have a multiplying effect. They support not just the families of employees, but their neighborhoods as a whole. Another outcome for businesses during gentrification is the change in consumer demand. Gentrifying neighborhoods are more likely to attract new types of services than our non-gentrifying and higher income neighborhoods, and they more often attract multi-establishment businesses, such as chains, to replace displaced businesses. Changes in startup and operating costs is another outcome for businesses during gentrification. Gentrification can also change the cost of operating or opening a business. For existing businesses, the effect is very direct. Because of increased demand for the area, rents can increase. Without a concomitant increase in revenues, the cost of operating could become unsustainable and force closure. A direct example of that is Sizzle Pie. So this used to be a common spot for Seattle University students. However, after 3 years of operating, they unfortunately had to close because of the increase in operating costs. On to my case study now. Lower East Side Manhattan versus New York City's Planning Commission. So the local organizations of Manhattan's Lower East Side took a stand against New York City's Planning Commission to create 3 buildings. These organizations included business owners, Youth Against Displacement, Chinese Staff and Workers Association, and many more local organizations to Lower East Side Manhattan. The proposed project consists of 3 buildings with 4 towers, a standalone 80-story tower, a 70-story tower, and a 63-story tower sharing a base, and a standalone 63 tower. They would add approximately 2,775 new dwelling units. The Planning Commission stated that out of the 2,775 new dwelling units, 25% would be permanently affordable. However, the average monthly asking rent for non-rent protected units in Manhattan's Lower East Side was $1,900 for a studio and $3,300 for a 3-bedroom, giving low and moderate income households a smaller chance of affordability. So, the petition for this case study was one of the approvals violates a deed restriction, requiring some of the property to be used in perpetuity solely as housing for low-income elderly and disabled people. So the petition was granted. However, after several appeals from both groups, the developments are now ongoing. One of the towers being constructed already has internally caused housing prices to increase throughout the city. Seattle now may be following New York's footsteps in cutting affordable housing and increasing gentrification through the cityscape. New York, being a more populous city, has its own issues with gentrification. However, Seattle continuously becoming tech-oriented is having patterns that New York has now. So now, onto the solution of gentrification. The first solution I provided is affordable workspace. Providing tenants and homeowners a price that isn't driving out existing ones and bringing in more affluent ones. And an example, a real-life example of that working is in the early 2000s, a few London boroughs started to introduce affordable workspace policies, requiring that new mixed-use development on employment land should provide some affordable workspaces to be let at a discounted rent to a workspace provider who takes on the lease. By the late 2000s, the London Borough of Hackney emerged as the local authority in London with the most experience of implementing its policies and had delivered over 10 mixed-use schemes with affordable workspaces. The second solution is decommodifying housing. The government having control and possession of property for it to be given at an affordable rate to those who are in need of assistance, danger of rising house prices. So, another real-life example of the solution of gentrification is in Vienna, Austria, where a project developer or a housing developer has created housing for those at the bottom of the social safety net. 62% of residents in Vienna are in social housing, either directly built by the municipality of the city of Vienna or by tightly regulated nonprofits, and it enjoys some of the most affordable metropolitan housing in Europe as a result. So, there are results already to combat gentrification. It's possible to prevent it and from it to spread more rapidly. However, there are limitations to it. Limitations are housing prices. With Seattle ranking in third as the most quickly gentrifying city in the US, housing prices have been growing at an extreme rate, making affordable housing nearly impossible. Demand and supply is another limitation. The housing bubble in Washington state continues to grow as the high demand competes against such a low supply. So, going over to the chart here, there's 3 different indicators in this chart that are being tracked. First one being the annual income required to purchase a home. The blue line being the median household or the average household income to purchase a home. And then the median home price, which is right here. So, since 2010, the required income to own a home has been less than the median home price, and that gap continues to grow and grow. To give a direct statistic from this graph, with every $1,000 increase in the cost of building a new home, it prices out more than 2,500 people out of the market in Washington state. With that rapid growth comes more and more of a divide from what's affordable in the housing market, which causes more and more gentrification in the long run. Now let's go to the ethics on the solution of gentrification. When opposing gentrification, we are following both the ethics of utilitarianism and Kantian. Utilitarianism believes by creating affordable housing and decommodifying housing, there's more access given to future homebuyers to purchase a home, thus producing the greatest quantity of good. And by Kantian's ethics, by creating these solutions, more people are given housing, decreases the amount of people impacted by gentrification, thus demonstrating the goodwill of people. And now to go to the losers, winners, and mixed. The losers are the individuals who want to relocate to Seattle from their previous homes, such as affluent movers, tech-oriented people, highly knowledgeable professionals, and all that. The winners are the tenants, homeowners who get to continue living in their home, such as Seattleites, Washingtonians, people that have lived here for a while and do not want to move out at the rise of housing prices. And the mixed is the government or the city of Seattle. My personal biases, I admit there are a few. Family members have been impacted. My aunt and uncle were forced to move out from central Seattle to South Seattle to Federal Way because of how high housing prices ended up being. Another thing is the disproportionate impact on minorities. Being a first generation East African American, I see this problem relates exactly to the identity I am. With that being said, Seattle's gentrification and gentrification as a whole disproportionately impacts people of color like me, which gives me more of a bias on why I disapprove of it. Personal beliefs. I don't support the idea of removing people that have cultures engraved into a city just for it to be removed by a progressive capitalistic society. Especially when my parents sought asylum in Seattle many years ago. I can't imagine how hard it is now to seek asylum or just live in Seattle with the rising housing prices. Personal beliefs aside though, I still believe that the sources I use for my solutions are as non-biased as I believe. As I use many local officiating sources, including the City of Seattle and the University of Washington, as well as reliable sources like NPR and Merriam-Webster Dictionary. The stakeholders of gentrification. First stakeholder is the individuals being displaced, such as Seattleites that formerly lived in Seattle. They are impacted negatively as they are fighting to remain in the houses that they've lived for however long. Both solutions, decommodifying housing and affordable workspace, will help these individuals as will prevent housing prices from increasing for them, causing long-term residency in the city of Seattle. The other stakeholder in this is affluent movers. They are impacted in a positive way as they are moving into a new neighborhood that provides a new job and living space. The solutions may prevent these affluent people from purchasing a home, as it may give priority access to those who are low income. The next individual is the city of Seattle. If more people move into Seattle, more taxes are collected, which then provides more funding for the city. Solution would impact the city in a negative way, as they wouldn't have as much funding as they would if housing wasn't decommodified. Conclusion. To reprimand gentrification not only in Seattle but throughout the whole country would in turn lead to a sacrifice by either allowing the spread of it to happen, which would cause many of those who can't afford to live in their once hometown to move out, or the solution that was previously mentioned, decommodifying housing and making affordable workspace nearly a human right to have. At the end of the day, funding is what we needed most, and efforts to do research on this also require funding. Both the framework for both affordable workspace and decommodifying housing needs funding, and until then, we must continue to fight the systematic issues that home and business owners from all different backgrounds come from, and hope that one day housing will be an issue of the past. That is all for my presentation on the ethics of Seattle's gentrification. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them. Other than that, thank you guys for watching, and have a good day.